Governor Hochul's big energy summit was held in Syracuse last week, and it appears the governor is interested in the possibility of building more nuclear power plants in New York. The state released a draft master plan and will begin the process to consider adding advanced nuclear technology to our energy mix. Hochul said it could be part of an all-of-the-above strategy to meet goals for carbon-free energy and the expected rising demand for power. So, Aaron, should nuclear energy, be part of our solution?
So here's the thing. Nuclear energy already is part of our climate solution. I checked this morning, and as of this morning, 19.76% of our electricity in New York State on our electric grid right now is coming from nuclear energy, 2.5 billion watts. Now, the law says that by 2040, we have to have 100% zero carbon electricity on New York State's electric grid. That's a big lift. That's 15 years from now, and that means we no longer burn climate-polluting fossil fuels like natural gas. But nuclear is zero carbon. It doesn't emit greenhouse gases. And unlike wind and solar, nuclear can provide something really critical to the grid, and that's called base load, right? There's always a certain amount of electricity that has to be on the grid. Wind and solar are intermittent sources. So the other option on a carbon-free grid for base load, and we're going to keep having some hydropower as well, is batteries, big battery farms. Now, those have not proven super popular. We are building them around the country and in New York, right? So her solution and her idea here is we need to provide baseload on a zero carbon grid of the future. We have nuclear already 20% of our electric grid. There's new nuclear technologies out there. We should look at thinking about doing this. Now, of course, we're going to hear about some of the concerns about this.
And I think Anirban has a few.
Yeah, so I am not an expert on this. So I follow this guy, Thomas Wellock, who is the official historian for the Nuclear Regulatory Council, and Daniel Ford, who had written extensively on this in New York and other places. And their main problem or the critique is that the scientists actually do not have any scientific way to calculate the risk. Right? So let's pause and think about that. The scientists do not know. They never knew about what actually the risk is. And the worst, they didn't have the method to even calculate what the risk was. And it's just guesswork, right? And when these fallouts happen, they are terrible, right? And the regulatory commissions kind of knew that. So I guess what comes out of his recent book called Safe Enough, The History of Nuclear Power, is that nuclear power's potential contribution to clean energy has been compromised by safety shortcuts that the industry has historically taken. And the International Energy Agency, Atomic Energy Agency, says that nuclear power will be all but an irrelevant energy source in the world by 2050. Right? And that's IAEA saying that.
Why do they say that? Is that because we have fusion? I mean,
I think the reason that they're saying that because of this prediction that every 7 or 8 years there would be a nuclear fallout. And these people actually predicted these, right? That when would the next nuclear fallout would happen. And he actually said it will happen in Toledo, and this Toledo farm had to pay out this massive damage, right? So my thing is that, yeah, it seems clean, but, the fallouts are terrible. And again, Fukushima, there was this large vat of unspent fuel which would have almost caught on fire, and in which case Tokyo could have been evacuated by that time, right? So it was by a hair inch, right?
Okay, Jenny?
Yeah, so I guess one of the problems we have, though, is when there are events that happen at nuclear facilities, they tend to appear very dramatic. But what's hidden is all of the coal miners who are injured or killed in coal mining, which is actually substantially more people per year than what we see with nuclear accidents. But because it's smaller numbers, it's not as dramatic. Cities aren't potentially threatened. It doesn't get the same level of attention. If we're actually going to take climate change seriously, we have to put nuclear on the table. And it does mean really thinking about the regulatory issues that make it very challenging to actually spin up new nuclear power plants, because the regulatory quagmire is spectacular, and it can take decades to get a new plant up and running. So Hochul will have to address that.
And the new plants that have been discussed generally are not plants like the ones we have now, although that is what they built recently in Georgia, I believe, or South Carolina.
South Carolina.
Yeah. And the new one in Wyoming. And so, again, usually mainstream here, and the point that Aaron made is that we're going to have to rely on a variety oil, of energy sources, and so it appears that nuclear should be one. Again, I'm not an expert, and I was happy to hear what you had said about that. Again, we've had innovations on efficiency, safety, and
Congress
economic.
does actually have to figure out what to do with the spent fuel rods, though. That remains an issue.
So some of the new nuclear reactors are small and modular, can do 300 megawatts, which is, like having 300 wind turbines in one little reactor. But here's one of the interesting things about this. There are huge generational dividing lines. I give a lot of public talks about climate change, and I'd say everyone in the audience who has gray hair is like, ooh, nuclear, we don't want that, because of lived experiences with meltdowns. And everyone who's under 30, and I have a class right now of students studying renewable energy solutions and climate solutions, they are all super pro-nuclear, all of them. They're really excited about nuclear energy because they understand the need to create a grid that's carbon-free but has reliable baseload. We can do a lot of that with wind, water, and solar. We can do almost all of it, as you'll hear in my A soon, but we can't quite do all of it, and we need to look at things like nuclear.
That's really surprising that the young
Absolutely.
people are
Yep.
pro-nuclear here.